This is the Giraffes Don't Eat Steak podcast, a show that brings you marketing stories, tips, hints, and much more. A treat for those who want to succeed in business or marketers who just want to learn. Hello, Alec.
Hi, Erica. How are you doing?
I am great. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
Awesome. You're looking very rested.
Uh, well, I've had 3 weeks off with my family, so I'm not really sure if that is resting. It is and it isn't at the same time. But it's been, I do feel ready to go again. Let's say that.
Oh, fabulous. Well, I'm kicking us off with an amazing guest today, Gus Bhandal. Gus, I don't even know if I'm saying your surname correctly. Welcome to our show.
It's absolutely perfect. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. So great to see you, Erica, and great to meet you, Alex.
Welcome, Gus.
So I will admit, Gus and I have never met in person. We've actually never even had a conversation, but I have been stalking Gus on LinkedIn for quite a while. I'm a good LinkedIn stalker. And I also happened to see Gus speak at one of the networking events I attend. And I thought, oh, wow, we can talk marketing. So that is the background to me and Gus.
That's really interesting that you say that, Erica, because obviously we were part of the same networking group for many years, so pre-lockdown, and obviously I stalked you too, and I knew, I know a lot about you. I know we have a lot of mutual friends, etc. But now that you mention it, yes, that's right. We've never spoken, but obviously being networkers and being online and being connected on LinkedIn, you just assume that actually everybody is your friend and you just know everybody. But it's a really good point
So
that we've
true,
never
right?
never chatted. Yeah, so it's a great first conversation.
That's also a good place to jump in because Eric and I always talk about this, and we call these people the lurkers.
Mhm.
And so we always say that, if you do a post and I know let's say you got 150 likes, just for example, and you can look through the list of the likes of the people who liked your post, but you've also got these people who always looking at your posts. They're always going on their feed, but they never interact. And like we've had some business come through from some people that we
Yeah.
know have never reacted to us. We've never seen them on our radar at all.
Mm.
And it just kind of emphasizes the importance of being visible. And even if you don't necessarily, outside of the obvious people who are engaging, now there is another audience of people who, like we said, we call the lurkers, who are just
Mm.
there observing what you're doing, just kind of quietly biding their time. And then when they have a problem that or whatever, and they see that your solution is exactly what they need, then they dive in and say something, usually directly through a DM or however. For example, Erica contacted you for
Mm.
the podcast. So it's
Absolutely.
quite an interesting place to start, I think.
It's fascinating stuff, particularly on LinkedIn, because so for example, when you do real life networking, not everybody in the room is an extrovert, or not everybody wants to talk. There'll be somebody standing by the coffee, somebody standing by the breakfast, somebody just who takes their seat straight away, and there's somebody that will just go around and talk to everybody and shake as many hands as possible or hug as many people. And LinkedIn is exactly the same. We have people who treat it differently because of the way they are, their personality types, who they are and what they do, etc. So obviously, like you said, if you post something on LinkedIn and you get lots of likes, you will see that the impressions number is completely different. It's a much higher number. Exactly, and that's because we have so many more people that are viewing content as opposed to engaging with it, commenting on it, etc. And actually, those people are just as important as anybody who does engage with our content, etc. And this is why LinkedIn is great, because the algorithm still pushes our content out to lots of people. I think and that's the beauty of it. I think that a lot of social media platforms are strangling the reach,
Yeah.
even to your own connections and your own network, etc. Whereas I think LinkedIn thrives on the fact that it publishes content and kind of shares it out and disseminates it to a much wider audience.
Yeah, that's true. But I help me, guys. I still get people saying, why should I be on LinkedIn? There's too many people on there. Do you still get that?
Occasionally, yeah. There's lots of people who kind of decide, because people have their opinions of certain social media platforms, and they'll, like, for example, TikTok is just full of young people, and
Yeah.
Twitter is just full of racist people, and LinkedIn is only for old people who wear suits, and and all that kind of stuff. And I think times have changed, and I think particularly with where we are on LinkedIn, it's actually good to have a large audience. When I talk to people about LinkedIn, so for example, Facebook has about 4 billion users. Instagram has about, sorry, Facebook has 4 billion members. Instagram has about 2 billion members. TikTok has about 2 billion, and LinkedIn is just over a billion. So 1.1 billion people on LinkedIn, which obviously is a massive, it's a large part of the first world. But also the people that you're talking to, the network that you have, are people that should be your ideal clients, your potential clients, people you're building good relationships with, etc. So it's all about curating the right audience and not necessarily having to speak to everybody in the world or try and deal with as many people as possible. The beauty of LinkedIn is that you can curate your audience so you have the network that you want to speak to, as opposed to trying to speak to everybody. So yeah, I get that often in terms of, oh, it's too big, or it's too much, or there's a lot of content and all that kind of stuff. But actually, if you're not posting content, somebody else is, and in fact, your competitors are. And I think that's the important thing.
Absolutely. And you can be the best at what you do, but if you're the world's best kept secret, then what's the use, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And related to that, I have a lot of questions about people asking me, oh, should I go onto Blue Sky, or should I try one of these other new platforms, etc.? And I always say, well, if your audience is there, then by all means. But
Yeah.
if you're just going there, so for example, Blue Sky has 25 million users, which sounds like a lot. It's like great. If I walked into a room and there was 25 million people I could talk to, fabulous. But despite the fact that it would take me another 25 years. But the fact of the matter is that when you compare it to a billion users elsewhere, it's actually a massive difference. And the point is, with any social media platform, whether it be LinkedIn or anywhere else, you're only as good as your audience. Because like you say, if you're the world's best kept secret, if you go into Blue Sky and none of your ideal clients are there or potential clients, you're just creating content for the sake of creating content. Oh, I had a cup of tea today. Who cares? And it's nobody's reading that stuff. So I think that's the other thing. Actually, having a place where there is a large population is a good thing, particularly when it comes to building our business.
Absolutely. So if someone is thinking about whether or not they should be on LinkedIn, Gus, where do you recommend they start?
So I always recommend starting with, so if we talk about marketing plans and marketing strategies, we always say, you should know who your ideal clients are, and you should know your markets, and you should know your products, and do the 7Ps and all that kind of stuff, and do soft stack and all this other kind of stuff, pestle analysis and all this other kind of stuff. But when it comes to social media, when we bring this all down to LinkedIn, ultimately it's about finding the right audience and creating content that audience wants to read. So I always recommend starting with, obviously, optimizing your profile so it says the right things. So when people come across it, when people land on it, like earlier we were talking about lurkers and people who are scrolling their feed and searching for particular things, etc. You want your profile to say what it needs to say. The second step would be to curate your own audience. And obviously the beauty of LinkedIn is it's the only place where you get to curate your audience. So everywhere else, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, etc., you have to rely on people finding you. You have to say, I exist on this platform. Please come and find me. Please search for me. On LinkedIn, you can do the outreach. You do the search. You use the search box and you kind of search for whatever you want. Business owners in London, or pharmacists in Farnborough, or goat herders in Grimsby. Whatever it may be, you find exactly the people you want to speak to, and then you go and do the outreach and connect with them. And hopefully, they accept your connection request. And ultimately, you then create an echo chamber of people that should be, in essence, buying your services. And I think that's where people need to start on LinkedIn, particularly curating an audience of ideal clients rather than curating a massive audience of people who, quite frankly, couldn't care less about you.
That's a great point. I hadn't actually thought about that before, but the fact that LinkedIn is the one place where you can choose who you want to connect with, right? You find there. That's a really, really fascinating point.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to ask you a question about, I know I have my answer in my head, but I would like just to get your view. If someone comes to you as a client saying, okay, I want to be on LinkedIn, shall I pay for ads, or should I just start doing some content writing, and should I just start be posting every day, or what should I do? Should I pay, or should I do some free content? Should I sponsor my posts or not?
That's a great question. I think particularly when it comes to LinkedIn, the beauty of the free stuff is still great. I think that's the thing. I think, like we said earlier, on a lot of platforms, content can be strangled and our reach can be strangled. Whereas I think LinkedIn still thrives on pushing content out to lots of people. This is the whole 6 degrees of separation. It's we find networks in other people's networks, etc. I would always say that we should use a two-pronged approach on any social media. Like there should be the organic, the free stuff that we do in terms of content writing, content posting, audience curation, etc. But there's also plenty of room for the paid stuff as well. Paid advertising, signing up for premium, signing up for Sales Navigator, etc. It's all about growing our LinkedIn presence. And obviously, if we're going all in on LinkedIn and we want to use that as business owners, then I think we need to take a multi-pronged approach in terms of, yes, let's do the organic stuff, but we should look into the paid stuff as well. What I would say though is don't do the paid stuff until you've settled on the organic stuff, until you've got the organic stuff right. And that, again, it applies on any platform.
Yeah.
There's no point doing advertising if your organic strategy sucks. That's the thing. If it's not, if you don't have the right content, you haven't curated the right audience, you're not posting the right stuff, things are blank, things are missing, etc., etc. You can spend all the money in the world, but when your potential clients do their due diligence and they come and see the organic stuff and say, actually, this is rubbish, they'll move on. Doesn't matter how much money you spend on ads. So I recommend ads. I would say ads are a great thing, or paying for LinkedIn is a great thing, but let's make sure that we maximize the organic strategy first.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think paid may not be for some people depending on budgets or whatever, but if they are going down the paid route, the organic content is a great test bed for paid advertising. I mean, it's the best way to test anything, really.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I would so arguably LinkedIn is also the most expensive place to put adverts as well, because the audience is very targeted. So Facebook ads can be comparatively cost effective, as can Twitter ads or X ads or whatever we call it nowadays. And then it's kind of like a sliding scale. And I think LinkedIn ads and Google ads are kind of on par. LinkedIn's own recommendation is to spend £50 per day on LinkedIn, on LinkedIn ads, which is, for a lot, it's out of reach for a lot of smaller businesses. So that's kind of, you don't want to be that drop in the ocean kind of thing. But like we said, that's where the organic strategy really comes in, because obviously if you test it and it works well and you get some clients and make some money, then obviously we can expand on that and amplify that using ads. We just have to make sure that we have the right budget in place.
Yeah. So talking about content writing, so if we're just taking someone who's kind of new to LinkedIn, but not necessarily new to talking about their business, so it's just someone who kind of knows what they're talking about, but are there any, let's say, content writing strategies that, just the basic 101 of content writing for LinkedIn, like any kind of tips you might give somebody who's like, this is my first post on LinkedIn, like how should they go about and if we're talking about them writing it on their individual profile as opposed to the business side?
Yeah, absolutely. I think LinkedIn is a great place to build a personal brand, and ultimately you have to find your brand voice, your tone of voice, your how you talk and all that kind of stuff. The most basic of advice would be, whatever content you write, make sure you write it like you talk. Because and this is where AI comes in, because actually AI is counteracting that, because I've seen many people that I've met in real life and they couldn't string 2 sentences together, and and they write a LinkedIn post with all this fabulous language, and you think, you don't talk like that, that's not you. And I know it sounds like a very trite marketing statement to say always be yourself, but obviously I think that's really important, and this, particularly on LinkedIn. Now, when it comes to a longer term content marketing strategy, I normally for example, LinkedIn have just hired a new chief marketing officer, and the chief marketing officer specifically referenced LinkedIn as a talent acquisition site. So LinkedIn still sees themselves as a job site, as a place where they can put CVs and get, people get jobs and all that kind of stuff. To a certain extent, I disagree. I think it's obviously that still exists, but I think it's a fully fledged social media platform where people are being social. And I think what we do is we build relationships with people to either find new employees, find a new employment, build new relationships, get new clients, etc., etc. So we would talk to them. With LinkedIn, it's a much longer strategy. It's a much longer game. So a long-term content marketing strategy would include stories about yourself, stories that resonate with others, things that we can tell that we're doing kind of day to day, but also authoritative content in terms of this is what I do for a living, this is my experience, this is what I know, etc. Particularly if you're trying to make money and you're trying to sell yourself and sell your business, etc. You have to sell. You have to prove that you know what you're talking about. So in terms of my content marketing strategy, I have two content pillars, which is make people think and make people laugh. That's the only two things that I do. So half of my content strategy is very jovial content, stuff like, I made a lasagna last night, or I bought some new orange trainers, or I took my dog for a walk, or I listened to this podcast, etc. But then half of my content is very much, here's a new feature on LinkedIn, or here's something you should learn about LinkedIn, or here's something that you could do on LinkedIn that you're not doing, or etc. etc. So it's very authoritative content. And the two dovetail together where people think not only is he a nice guy and he's a funny guy, but he also knows what he's talking about. And I think whatever your tone of voice is, make sure that your content marketing strategy amplifies that tone of voice.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I was just this week, I've been working with a friend. He's busy job hunting at the moment, so using LinkedIn to find a job. But I looked at his profile and that needed a lot of work. So we spoke about it, but he's never posted a single thing for 3 years. So I'm like, well, people are going to look to see, do you know what you're talking about? Right.
Yeah.
So post something like
Yeah.
talk about what you know. Even if you're job hunting, it still shows that you are knowledgeable about, other than a CV, which says I know how to put stuff down. Anyway, he did a draft about a conversation we'd had because I was like, that conversation we had yesterday, that's exactly what you should be saying. So he did a draft. He sent it to me. I'm like, it's awesome. Post that. Just go and post. He was like, oh no, he needs to clean it up a bit, perfectionist syndrome. Anyway, he resent it to me, and I could see straight away, you ran this through AI, right? Like, this doesn't sound like you anymore. I'm like, no, no, no. Revert, because
Absolutely.
I I can feel this. Well, because I know him, I can feel it wasn't him. But you start to get a feel that this is too perfect, right? Too clean. It's not natural. Anyway, he still hasn't posted, so I'm waiting anxiously to see which version he goes with. But it's so true, right? It just doesn't matter where you are, whether you're job hunting, whether you're running your own business, whatever you're doing, is LinkedIn is such a great place just to showcase your knowledge and your skills and what you have to offer.
Absolutely. So many people have a fear of posting. And I always say that if you have a fear of posting, just go and comment, just go and engage with other people's content instead. Because like you say, when people do their due diligence, so for example, employers, employees, potential clients, people you want to work with, stakeholders, whatever it may be, they will do their due diligence. When you look at a CV, all the CVs are the same. Everybody's CV can say, I worked in a marketing industry, I've got this marketing qualification, please hire me. Everybody is saying the same thing. So to separate people, we separate ourselves with our tone of voice. So how do we talk to others? How do we engage with others? What are we posting? What are we talking about? What makes us tick? And this is why social media has become a LinkedIn has become a fully fledged social media channel, because it's where people are conversing and telling us this is who we are, this is what makes us tick, and they're engaging with others. We can see how they interact and all that kind of stuff. And to be honest, if it is too perfect, I think to myself, well, it's either you're going to hate me because I'm not perfect, or this is fake. Basically.
Absolutely.
And also just staying on that point of be yourself, and this kind of be yourself, be authentic. It only benefits you in the future. If we're talking about job hunting, and it's the same as talking about writing in your post for your clients, for example. If you're being yourself in your job application and your interviews and your job posting, your CV, etc., you'll find people who will see that and go, that person's not for me. But you'll also get people who go, that person is for me. And if you're being authentic, then that they feel connected with you, and that will be a genuine connection, and that will help you in the process, when you arrive at the interview because your CV got accepted, they like the look of it, you're already a step ahead because you don't have to be any different. You don't have to pretend you're someone else, and you're already connecting. And
Sorry, go on.
No, Karen, jump in.
I was going to say that when I was young, my mother said to me that if you are always yourself, then you never have to remember anything. Because quite frankly, if you lie, if you're pretending to be someone else, you always have to put on a persona. So you always have to remember, how did I talk to this person, or what did I say, or what ridiculous stories have I told? Whereas if you're always yourself, you never have to remember anything because you are just you, right?
Yeah, and then just going back to the post writing about being yourself, just from a practicality point of view, and for your longevity of posting on LinkedIn, if you're just being yourself, it's much easier just to start writing and being yourself instead of like saying pretending to be someone else and trying to remember how you were. It's very, very hard. It's like as a marketer, I'm sure all of us have written posts for other people, for clients who do not want to write. That is the hardest thing. That's
hard.
That's way harder than doing it for myself, for example. And then to keep doing it. There's some roles where you have to keep doing it every day. You're the social media marketing manager, and the CEO that you're posting on their page never looks at the post, for example, and you have to constantly do it.
Yeah.
And that's hard, because then you have to write down who you are or who they are, and be an actor and become that person every day when you do it.
And it's funny you say that, actually, because a lot of my content on LinkedIn in particular is quite jovial. And I've got a lot of clients because of that jovial content, because they come to me and say, listen, our sector is quite boring, our industry is quite boring, our content is quite boring. We think you're the guy to make it interesting. And so a lot of them give me free rein in terms of to change their tone of voice slightly. Like, they still have to be professional and all that kind of stuff. But it's more storytelling, and it's more personable, etc. So it talks to them people, talks to those people. One of my clients, he's part of a networking group, and they want to get more visitors to their networking group. So he sent me an email the other day, and he basically said, "Here's what the boss of the networking group has sent everybody. Can we just copy and paste it onto social media?" And it kind of said something like, "We're delighted to be hosting this day. We'd love for you to come along." And he doesn't talk like that at all. And I said, "No." I said, "I'm not posting that for you, because that's not how you talk. Like, he's never delighted, and he hates everything. So there's no way that's how he talks." So I said, no, so we changed it into his language. So I think particularly as marketers, we have to know who our clients are, how we're going to talk to our clients, and get that tone of voice and all that kind of stuff. And again, going back to the kind of the content marketing strategy, particularly when I start working with new clients, I often say to them, if you're going to start posting, the best thing to do is to start journaling your week. I normally say, say on a Friday, just tell the world what you've been doing this week. It's such an easy post. And you're the only person that can write that post, because you're the only one that lives your life. So it's very easy to say, well, on Monday, I met a new client. On Tuesday, I got a testimonial. On Wednesday, I listened to this podcast. On Thursday, I bought pizza for everybody in the office, etc., etc. The only person that lives your life is you. And I think that becomes authentic on LinkedIn, because it resonates with people. People say, "Oh, I like pizza too," or "I got this testimonial as well," or "Oh, I know that client," or whatever it may be. So I think it's a very easy kind of way into content marketing, because obviously once that grows, then you start writing individual posts about things like that, which again grows the authenticity, it grows the integrity. People get to know you, like you, and ultimately trust you.
Oh, I love that. That's really awesome. That an interesting story also about authenticity is the image, right? I mean, I recently worked with a business, and everyone's image was terrible. Like, you just was taken in a car, or it was just in a bathing costume. Like, there was, and you also have to say, well, how do you want to show up? Like, what do you want people to think about you? And for me, two things. Well, number one, you look just like your LinkedIn profile image, so that's really good. I wasn't surprised when you pitch up. And
I
but
don't anymore. I had a lot more hair. Now I've got
yes,
less.
you did. You need
Those
you
were
need
the
an
days.
update.
Need to update mine.
But I recently, or late last year, went to a face-to-face networking, And while I was chatting to some people, someone came over and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I have to hug her."
Mm,
And I got this hug in the middle, and I'm like, what's happening? And we had never met in person. 3, 4 years ago, we were part of a networking and we'd been online. So we were
mm,
stalking each other on LinkedIn. And he recognized me from LinkedIn because I look like LinkedIn. And
mm.
that was, he's like, "Oh my goodness, I know her." And he like
Yeah,
beelined across the room. So, if you look like your picture, it also helps you in that way, and that people
mm,
will immediately recognize you. I mean,
absolutely.
the opposite was Alex and I went, we had this meeting, and the person said, "You're wearing the same top as your LinkedIn profile." That was a little bit awkward.
Yes. Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
how
you know,
closely have you looked?
well, absolutely. But of course, it's brand congruence. Like a lot of the clothes that I wear are either black or orange. So it's very easy for me like to kind of stand out in a crowd. And not only that, when I open my wardrobe, it's kind of I either choose something that's black or orange. It's nice and easy, right? But it is that kind of brand
So I guess
congruence.
orange is your favorite color.
It is absolutely, yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, and that's the thing. It's part of my brand. It's something that kind of stands for. But also it's when people see these flashes of color, like I wear orange trainers as well, or I give out orange chocolate. I sent out posts in orange envelopes and all that kind of stuff. And I think people, and again, particularly when it comes to LinkedIn, there's 1.1 billion people, and we have to stand out in this sea of people. So, I know somebody that wears exactly the same dress every single time she goes out as the dress that she wears in her photos on LinkedIn. And it's just, and I said to her, "Do you only own one dress?" And she said, "No, actually, I bought 5 of these dresses because I only wear this dress." And she said, "I know it looks like that I never get changed, but actually, it's that brand congruence,
Kind
etc."
of like Steve Jobs and the turtleneck.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It's easily recognizable. Just as a very kind of a small housekeeping tip on LinkedIn, make sure that you check your settings, your visibility, because I did this with a couple of clients only this morning, where their profile picture wasn't visible to anyone except their first degree connections, which means that when people, if you, for example, if you went networking and somebody wants to connect with you, and if you have a comparatively generic name, people wouldn't recognize you because the photo isn't visible. So I always recommend go through your settings and just make sure that everything is visible and people can see things because, as you say, this is how people recognize one another.
Also, the tagging, that's the other basic housekeeping one for me.
Mm,
A lot of people, maybe accidentally, I don't know, have the tag me setting unchecked.
mm,
And so it's quite surprising because some people who are quite active on LinkedIn, writing posts, commenting, sharing, I've tried to
mm.
tag them and they're untaggable. Maybe they
Yeah,
just want to be tagged, but I feel like personally, I feel like you're kind of doing yourself a disservice there a little bit.
absolutely. And across the world, it's different for everybody. Like everybody's settings are different. Like here in Europe, it kind of we had this thing where just a couple of months ago, LinkedIn changed. They opted everybody in to the AI model. So it's like we're going to take all your data to use in the AI model. And actually, the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, basically um, people had complained, so they got in touch with LinkedIn, and LinkedIn had to backtrack and kind of switch it off and say, actually, we can't do that. However, that only exists, I believe, in Europe. Like people in America and Australia, etc., were not opted in. So it's always, no matter what territory you're in, it's always worth checking your settings because some settings just change automatically depending on whatever local legislation is, etc. So I normally check it probably every 3 or 4 months, just because obviously I got way too much time on my hands. But I generally check my settings just to make sure that they all say the right things, and people can tag me and people can see my profile picture and people can see my name and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a good tip. I haven't checked mine in a while. I think,
Mm,
was it last year? Sometimes, Alex, you were suddenly untaggable, right? It was
Yeah,
like, what?
true. Yeah, yeah, it was true. Yeah, but then that was very strange.
mm.
So, are there any industries that you think should not be on LinkedIn, or it would be a waste of time if you're business to business, right? Any industries that just don't work on LinkedIn? Is there any that you
Illegal
know
drug
of?
dealing. Illegal drug dealing.
Yeah, illegal
Okay.
drug. That industry I keep to Twitter. But the no that was a joke for the listeners. Um, I don't think there's, as off the top of my head, I don't think there's any industry that shouldn't be on LinkedIn. And I know lots of people, particularly lots of marketers, will say that LinkedIn is specifically a B2B kind of network. Well, now that we have over 1 billion people on LinkedIn, ultimately they're all humans, right? They're all kind
Yeah.
of people like it is anywhere else. Marketers will say, oh, you're not going to find your ideal clients on Facebook either, but there's 4 billion people on Facebook. There's bound to be somebody buying something, and it's because we're all human. And I think this is where social media is going in terms of, all, has been going for a while, is that it's all about that realness, that authenticity, that personal brand, getting to know people, etc. People buy from people and all that kind of stuff. So regardless of your industry, your sector, etc., if you go on LinkedIn and curate an audience and then create content that audience wants to read, that then resonates with that audience, ultimately you're going to find people. And I don't, off the top of my head, I can't imagine any industry that shouldn't be on LinkedIn. Any legal industry that shouldn't be on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you were a doctor, maybe it's not the right place. I mean, you can still promote your wares, I guess.
I mean, it
But
depends if you got like a private consultancy or something like that.
Mm.
And it depends on the country as well. So, for example, in Colombia, I'm only saying it because I've seen it everywhere here. They have like a national healthcare, but it's
poor.
not the best.
Mm.
There's a lot of private institutions, private
Mm,
doctors, etc., and they advertise here like you would be advertising any other service, like a plumber or whatever it is. Is
okay.
that people always look for their doctor, whereas like I don't know, in the UK, I don't have a doctor. I walk into a building and it's like, doctor, please, whoever you are,
Mm.
I don't really care. But in this country, and I'm sure it's the same, and I think it might be the same in the States. I'm not sure, but just from all the TV series I've watched in the States, everyone's like, I need to get my doctor, and I've got my personal number to the doctor. But
Mm.
And South Africa, if you've got
oh yeah,
private, yeah, you have your doctor. I still miss my doctor every day.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I think, so like I currently work with a pharmacist.
Okay.
And the pharmacist, although they have, they have a pharmacy in a very specific area in the Midlands, and they kind of say, right, we only deal with people from a certain radius because that's the only people that can get there. But they
Mm,
post a lot on social media because they said, actually, we're willing to service people anyway. If you need the flu jab or a vaccination or you need some medication, etc., quite frankly, you can come from anywhere. And actually, they are near a large kind of industrial site. So there's lots of kind of manufacturing businesses on this particular business park, and they are the nearest pharmacy. So they post a lot on LinkedIn because what they're trying to do, and they've curated an audience of people who are working on the business park. So
ah,
even though the people live miles away, what they do is on the way home, because it's the first pharmacy, if they need some medication, if they need something, etc., they go to that pharmacy, even though they live 20, 30, 40 miles away. So there is, I appreciate that with doctors and things like that, it's a very much a captive market. Because quite frankly, if you need the doctor, you need the doctor, right? You're not going to go on LinkedIn and say, oh, I wonder who can help me with, an eye operation or whatever. You don't do that. But I think
maybe
if
one day we will.
maybe one day we will, absolutely, yeah, I think that's the thing, and it's because obviously we want to choose the best person for us, and we want to
Yeah.
choose the
Can
person
someone
who's
refer me to the best eye
yeah,
doctor? I mean,
yeah,
why
absolutely.
why wouldn't you ask?
Exactly,
yeah.
and it happens, right? And I think that's the thing, and it's even those audience, or even those business owners and doctors or pharmacists or anything else that have a captive audience. I think they still can use LinkedIn to show off their authority and show off that
Yeah.
they know what they're talking about, etc. But also disseminate information. It's not always about making money. Sometimes it's about being helpful to a
Yeah.
community and to others. So if there were doctors there saying, well, this is what's happening in the NHS, or this is what's happened in legislation, or this is what the government are changing, etc., that stuff would fascinate me because I'd be like, that's then I can take that to my own doctor and say, hey, how come you're not telling me this? So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the business I'm working in at the moment is insurance. That's my bag.
Hmm.
And it's, especially brokers, they really
Mm.
struggle with social media in general. And, a lot of pushback on being on LinkedIn, etc. But I think that whole comment that you gave about curating your audience
Mm.
is the number one step. If you know who it is that you want to attract, if you're in a brokerage, for example, and you are looking for solicitors,
Mm.
that's your ideal. You can find a whole lot of them on LinkedIn, right? You could you
Yeah.
and per area if you want to, see them face to face or whatever, you can stick to an area. LinkedIn's got that field where you can choose your area, so you're not getting solicitors from Colombia, for example. But yeah, I think there's some industries that are slow to move. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. But the opportunity is so huge, especially for someone who'd be quick to move, right? Like
Yeah.
if no one else is doing it and you got in there first, wow, the opportunity is great. What do you think, guys?
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, it reminds me of a story that so there's, you know, obviously there are LinkedIn trainers all over the world, and obviously it's about you know, curating an audience that obviously is listening to you as opposed to listening to somebody else. And I think the opportunities to promote yourself, to market, or curate that audience, to create content they want to read are massive, because
Yeah,
particularly in a market of 1.1 billion people, you're bound to find somebody that wants to buy your services. Now, the one a LinkedIn trainer that I know here in the UK, she has a 5-day challenge that so it's basically, I'm going to help you with LinkedIn. This is what you should change. This is what you should do. You should kind of get a bigger audience, etc. But what she used to tell people in the kind of the challenge was, go and connect to each other. Don't send introductions. Don't send personalized notes. Don't introduce yourselves to each other. Just go and connect to everybody. And then at the end of the week, she used to say, "Oh, look, all your numbers have gone up." Well, of course they've gone up because you're just connecting to everybody else in the challenge. And it was, the problem is, all those people in the challenge, they don't use LinkedIn anymore, or they're not making any money from LinkedIn, because all they've done is curate a massive audience of people that, quite frankly, couldn't care less about them. And I think that's the thing. It's not about having a massive audience, it's about having the right audience. So as
absolutely.
the whole you know, the marketing cliche is, I'd rather have 10 people that follow me and buy my services than 1,000 people that couldn't care less about me, you know. And I think that's the thing. And it's particularly on LinkedIn, it's the easiest to do, because you think about who your ideal clients are, and then you go and reach out to them and you connect to them. I would like to connect with you because I'd like to stay in touch, or I'd like this, or we're both based in this sector, or we're both based in this city, or whatever it may be. And it's those personalized notes that help us to curate an audience, so that when we create content, we're more or less guaranteed that people are going to get to know us, like us, and trust us, rather than just generic people all over the world that have no idea who we are.
Yeah.
And a lot of the pushback I get on clients who are using LinkedIn is the opposite side, is all the spam, right, that you get in
Mm,
your inbox, because you are going to get a whole lot of people trying to sell to you. That's
mm,
that's the game. And so they don't want that. But it's a balance. You're kind of going to get that anyway, right?
mm,
And you need to learn how to, in my opinion, you just need to sift through it and just ignore the ones that are not applicable to you.
yeah.
It's fine, right? You just,
Mm,
it's not the end of the world. But you are going to get that. And I mean, I've got a particular passion for catfish, right? I love catfish on LinkedIn. It's
mm,
my joy. I
yes.
I go, and because I'm telling everyone I'm a catfish hunter, I don't get lots anymore. But then every now and
Mm,
again I get one. I'm like, yes,
yeah.
I got
Yes.
another
You got
one.
it. Yes.
So
It's
so I look for it, but other people are offended by it, right? And then that's their reason for not being on LinkedIn, which is crazy.
you know, I think I hear this quite a lot in terms of people kind of saying, "Oh, I don't like the spam. I don't like the constant inbox messages. I don't like people selling to me and all that kind of stuff." But ultimately, people have to sell. People are trying to make money, and some people are more desperate than others. I think if you have the time and the inclination, what you will be doing is using LinkedIn to obviously build relationships. Because,
Yeah,
like I said, the ultimate goal is to get people to trust you. The reason we don't buy anything from these people is because we don't trust them, and the reason we don't
yeah,
trust them is because we don't know them. They could be selling the world's greatest item, but we don't know because we're already upset that they've bothered to email us, when really, or send us a DM, when really we should be saying, you know, thanks for your message, but let's keep in touch. We don't, you know, you don't know where those conversations are going to go. It's very rare that people buy something, you know, kind of immediately. But obviously these people have sales targets. They're salespeople, they have sales targets, they want to send out 1,000 messages and hopefully one person buys something, when really it's actually easier to build relationships over the long term and then get 10 people or 20 people or 30 people to buy from you, from a much
yeah,
smaller pool, because you've built that relationship with them.
Yeah. I actually think the spam and the sales messages that you find kind of offensive and you instantly reject are great learning materials,
Mm,
are great ways to understand how not to do it.
yeah.
And when you're creating your sales connection, sales messaging, take a look at it. Does this remind me of the ones I got really annoyed with, or am I really kind of doing something authentic? I think it's a great benchmark you can use
Yeah.
this.
And for me, when a great one comes, even if I'm not in the market, I'll always respond, and then I'll set up a call because that's really cool. That was an awesome pitch. I loved it. I wish I wanted to buy your stuff. So tell me more so I can refer you to other people, right? So
Yeah.
I get super excited when there's an awesome, unique approach that I haven't seen before, I haven't heard before. I'm like, tell me more about that.
Yes.
Just on that though, you do if you have a great sales pitch, please also have a good onboarding and
Yes.
follow-up process.
Follow
Please,
up.
getting a terrible email from someone that you immediately reject is way less disappointing than receiving some kind of communication that you loved, and then you speak to them, and then they just give
Drop
you
the ball.
a crappy onboarding or follow-up process, and he's like,
Or
oh,
don't respond after you've said, "Oh yes, that sounds interesting. Please
yeah,
talk to me," and then they don't respond, and you're
that's the
like,
worst one.
"What?"
That's
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
worst.
Absolutely. And I got to be honest, while we're talking about bugbears and we're talking about kind of issues, I think one of the other things is when people try to initiate, people that you don't know, try to initiate a conversation without any substance. So, oh, thanks for connecting. How are you today? And you kind of, you literally could say, well, I've just had my head chopped off. Do you know what I mean? And they couldn't care less because they are leading somewhere. And so sometimes I kind of think, you know what, let's just get to the point here. What are you selling? And all that kind of stuff. So I think, and don't get me wrong, I love conversation. I love getting to know people and all that kind of stuff. But you can also see the really obvious ones that kind of
Yeah.
are, how are you today? How's your business week? And all that kind of stuff. That as soon as I respond, they're going to respond with something like, well, it's funny you say that because this week I'm selling this. Would you like to buy it? And you just think, well, just get to the point, So there, yeah, I think it's a fine balance. I think it's very easy to get disappointed and upset with sales messages and all that kind of stuff. But I think if we just put themselves in their shoes and just think, actually, they have to sell, they have targets to hit, they might be a little bit more desperate for money than we are, and all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, everybody's a human, right? I think that's the thing. And so it's just something to watch.
So
And here's a tip: if they ask you what you had for breakfast, it's a catfish. Okay,
Yeah. Oh, of course.
nobody is
Yeah.
that interested in what you eat.
Yes. Yeah. Unless they're a
unless it's
nutritionist,
a
like.
dietitian,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did have a message recently saying, "Oh, what did you have for breakfast?" And I got to be honest, I answered it. They kind of responded and said, "Well, that's quite a lot of sugar, etc. That's probably why you look the way you do. I can, I can help you with." So, yeah. So I was very, on one hand, I was very impressed. On the other hand, I was really disappointed.
Slightly offended.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a bar of chocolate and got over it, basically.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question about, from my perspective, LinkedIn has kind of changed quite a lot over the last few years.
Hmm.
And I think maybe some people I've spoken to are kind of not aware of it, or thinking like some of the things I was doing before, it doesn't seem to be really working anymore. And outside of the content, I think there's some back end things, like LinkedIn stuff that's changed. And I was wondering, like, if you could give sort of an overview to maybe some people who aren't aware of any of the changes over the last few years. How do you think LinkedIn has changed, and like the approach, the sort of what is their what are they trying to get you to do? What do they appreciate, rather than, before it could have been one thing and now I think it's something slightly different.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So, at the expense of telling an incredibly long and boring story, LinkedIn started in 2002, and it was then bought by Microsoft in 2016. And then obviously we had the pandemic in 2020. Since 2020, they added as many members. So in the pandemic, at the start of the pandemic, there was about 650 million people on LinkedIn. And as of today, there's 1.1 billion people. So they added almost as many members in the last 4 years than they have in the first 18 years, for example. So it's rapid growth. And with that rapid growth, obviously we see issues, we see problems and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not entirely sure if Microsoft were prepared for that rapid growth since the pandemic. But ultimately, it's become a place where people tell stories. And people know that when you write stories, if they resonate with others, they're going to get reach, they're going to get engagement, etc. I think one of the issues is that we have to still remember what we do for a living and remember to be authoritative. I know lots of people on LinkedIn that only post jovial content, or they're always moaning about something like, oh, I hate engagement pods, or I hate this, or I hate that, etc. And I have no idea what they do for a living. And I just think,
Yeah.
actually, this person's just complaining all the time. I don't know what they do for a living. So I think it's that fine balance of making sure that we create content that our audience wants to read and that can resonate with them, but we also want to create content that basically shows us off as an authority. Now, particularly in the last couple of years at least, LinkedIn are slowly starting to turn the wick down on the reach and the push and the engagement that people are getting, simply because I think they're pushing more and more features into the paid versions. So, for example, now you used to be able to see the last 5 people that can view your profile. You can't do that now. They push that into the kind of the paid version. You used to have a whole services section. You don't get that now. You get a little services section, and if you want to add any reviews or images, etc., that's pushed into the paid kind of services. If you want to see detailed analytics, that's pushed into the paid services, etc. So obviously they want people to sign up for premium or sign up for Sales Navigator, etc. As a Sales Navigator user, I don't see any additional reach or any additional engagement or anything like that. I've got all the features and I can see everything and all that kind of stuff, but I know that they're pushing a lot of stuff away from the free stuff. The main thing is you can still connect to people and you can still build relationships and you can still create content. So despite the reach being lower, I think particularly for 2025, I think the strategy should be making sure that we do more outreach, more engagement with other people, more curating our audience, engaging with their content, sending them DMs, following other people, etc., which then changes our feed and then changes our algorithm. Because all social media platforms rely on us using the platforms. The very worst thing you can do is post content and then leave and then hope that somebody sees that content, because that's not how it works. I think it's more, particularly to get that engagement and to change the algorithm and change our feeds for the better. I think this year is all about more engagement, more community building, more speaking to our audience, more talking to others, engaging with their content, etc.
Fabulous. Well, Gus, that was a minefield of awesome tips. I think we could probably talk for another hour quite happily about
Indeed.
marketing. We seem very much aligned. If people want to know more about what you do or get in touch with you, how do they find you?
So obviously you can connect with me, Gus Bhandal, on LinkedIn, or I normally say if you just go to Google and type in the M Guru, you can find out everything about me. So my company is called the M Guru. Please sign up for my newsletter or connect on LinkedIn or find me on Instagram or whatever it may be, whatever you choose to do. But just so you know, I do my best work on LinkedIn. I guess we already know that though.
And I'm guessing LinkedIn is not the only service you offer. You've got
No, so I'm a marketing strategist by heart, but I essentially do social media training. So specifically, I do LinkedIn training, I do blog writing, I do email marketing. I can help with Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all that kind of stuff. But social media as a general. But from the point of let's get your marketing strategy right first, as opposed to let's just write a couple of rubbish posts on LinkedIn. It's so much more than that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I do.
Sounds perfect. Well, thank you. Alex, any
Yeah.
gems you picked up that you want to leave our audience with?
I just think the most important thing is, let's just say, be yourself, be authentic. I think that was that if you stick with that, you're already on the right track.
Yeah, love that.
Absolutely.
Gus, any last words of wisdom for our audience?
No, have fun. I think that's the important thing, particularly if you're using LinkedIn or any kind of social media. Have fun, because that's all. It's when we try too hard, we fall backwards. I think that's the thing. So let's just have fun, get people to know us, like us, and trust us.
Love it. Well, thank you so much. It's been an awesome episode. Alex, we will talk again soon. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Cheers. Bye-bye. That wraps up this episode of Giraffes Don't Eat Steak. Thanks for joining us. I hope you found value in our discussion and got some new ideas to apply to your own business. Tune in next week for another round of marketing insights and inspiration. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate you listening. Catch you next time on Giraffes Don't Eat Steak.